Good evening, everyone. Respected CA Dr. Devashish Mitra ji, President ICAI, CA Aniket Sunil Kalati ji, Vice President ICAI, CA Nihar and Jambu Saria ji, President SAFA, Mr. Heshana Kurupu ji, Vice President SAFA, CA Charanjot Singh Nanda ji, Chairman Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, CA Dayanivas Sharma ji, Vice Chairman Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, our eminent speakers CA Durgesh Pandey ji and Uday Kulkarni ji, and myself, CA Sampoon Sharma, moderator for today's session. Today, we have all gathered here on this virtual platform provided to us by the Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, hosted by SAFA Committee on Information Technology. Firstly, sir, my heartiest congratulations to Nihar sir and Heshana sir for the new elected positions, sir, and we hope that under your leadership, the committee reaches new heights. The topic for today's session is opportunities as a forensic investigator. To start off with today's session, I would like to invite CA Charanjot Singh Nanda ji, Chairman Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, ICAI, for welcoming remarks.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My elder brother, past President, ICAI, present President of SAFA, CA Nihar Jambu Saria ji, Mr. Heshna Kurupu, who is the Vice President in absentia. I can see Mr. Durgesh Pandey, the learned speaker of the day, Amit Gupta, the Secretary, Sampoon Sharma, the moderator of the session, and all who have come here to go home more enlightened. Ladies and gentlemen, your board, Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, is very keen to ensure that you have number of opportunities to perform. Let me put one thing very candidly. Only those people shall go into the next level of practice who are able to identify what the new areas are and attune themselves to that. Gone are the days when we used to focus on statutory audits. Now times have come when internal audit and forensic audit is taking its call. And in such times, what is the opportunity of a chartered accountant in forensic investigation? How you use your investigative skills, because you are aware that first time in the globe, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, under the aegis of Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, have promulgated 23 forensic standards. How you use those forensic standards to create value and worth for your practice-oriented areas is a very important thing. And in order to cater that, we have invited two of those people who have been doing forensic investigations day in and day out, Mr. Durgesh Pandey and Mr. Uday Kulkarni. I would also like to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that looking into the intense legal obligations, responsibility of the forensic auditor, and expectations not only of the stakeholders of the client, but the regulators of the government, a person who undertakes forensic investigations needs to be well versed with certain such areas that can ultimately empower him to add value to the perspective of the entire process, which is in our proposition. We as chartered accountants work a lot. A gentleman told me last week, he said, sir, people do not acknowledge us. I answered by way of a couplet which said, तारीफ की चाहत तो नाकाम लोगों की फितरत है. तारीफ की चाहत तो नाकाम लोगों की फितरत है. काबिल लोगों के तो दुश्मन भी कायल होते हैं. We add value of an institute. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India was set up by an Act of Parliament way back on 1st July 1949, when the most important document to the democracy, the Constitution, was not adopted. All of you well know that the Constitution to this country was promulgated on 26 January 1950. We are financial soldiers of this country. Financial investigation is ultimately our responsibility, and how effectively we do this shall be christened by today's session. I will not speak much. I have the President Safa there. I have Mr. Durgesh Pandey, the learned speaker of the day. So I would withdraw now and request Sampoon Sharma to take the matter further. But I want to end with one small note that DAB is always ready for your beck and call. Whenever you need us, feel free to call us. We'll come back and ensure that whatever intent is at your plate. Thank you. Thank you so much. And my heartiest congratulations to Mr. Nihar Jambu Saria, who took over as the president of SAFA last week. He was in New Delhi. It was a gala function. He took over as the president, and I know his capabilities. I know who he works. So now SAFA is in very fantabulous and safe hands, and he'll be able to add value to the entire initiative. My heartiest congratulations, President Sir, Vice President Sir, and all present here that we have such a great leader. Thank you. Thank you so much. Over to Sampur.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the welcoming words, and they were quite inspiring. And next up, I would like to invite C. Nihar and Jambu Saryaji, President SAFA, to share his thoughts and views with us. Nihar, sir, please take over.
Thank you, Sampurna. Good evening, everybody. And thank you so much for the kind words, Nandaji and Sampurna, on our taking over as president. My hearty congratulations to even the vice president, who is young and very capable person, to support me this year and will be taking the reins for the next year. Today's speakers, Durgesh ji and Uday ji, and all the participants. At the outset, let me congratulate the Information Technology Committee of SAFA and Digital Accounting and Assurance Standards Board of ICAI, both headed by C.A. Charanjot Singh Nandaji. And let me inform the participants that the year 2022 was marked by a number of events on information technology, and Nandaji is responsible, along with his vice chairman, Dayanivas Sarmaji, for organizing so many IT programs during the year. And in the year 2023, this is the first program of SAFA, which is also being conducted by DAB and IT committee. So my hearty congratulations on taking up again a new topic, opportunities in forensic investigation. Friends, you all know that year after year, the expectations from auditors are going very high. And the society, the stakeholders, and the governments are not realizing that statutory audit has its own limitations. It is conducted to give reasonable assurance, and each and every fraud or error cannot be detected by the statutory auditor. It has got certain limitations in scope, certain limitations in time, and forensic investigation may become the order of the day going forward. Internal audit has already started gaining importance because it is being done on a regular basis. Certain companies have mandatory internal audit, while others don't have it mandatorily to be done. And forensic audit, forensic investigation is ordered when there is a suspicion of fraud happening in the organization. Today's speakers will highlight what are the opportunities in the area of forensic investigation. So many professional accountants have taken up courses on forensic, and they are doing very well. And it is very right time, opportune time, to have a discussion on opportunities in forensic investigation so that more and more professional brothers and sisters would be encouraged to take up these courses. And Nandaji, during the year, it would be my humble request that although you have conducted so many programs on IT, and as you offered that you are always prepared to take up more and more programs, if we are able to organize some workshops and some intensive programs on some of the IT modules, which would be very useful to the professional accountants in their day-to-day practice, it would be, I think, appropriate during the year 2023. And we may endeavor to do that going forward. Thank you so much for inviting, and I'm sure that all the participants will have very good time and lot of value add during this session. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. President. I can only assure you one thing, that the process will go unabated. Next fortnight, we'll have one good program. And during an entire tenure, every fortnight, I will ensure that the program is there for the membership at large. So it is an honor that you are the president of DAB, it is a president of IFEC. It is an honor for us. And we'll live up to that expectation which you have carried on us. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sampunji.
Thank you, Nihar sir. Thank you, Nanda sir, for the kind welcoming words. And now, as I have already told you, that the topic for today's session is opportunities as forensic investigator. So And we have among us a very learned speaker today, is CA Dr. Durgesh Pandeji. A brief introduction about Durgesh sir is CA Durgesh Pandeji holds PhD in Forensic Accounting for National Forensic Sciences University, India, NFSU. He is a chartered accountant practicing in the domain of financial crime investigation in Ahmedabad. Sir is also certified frauds examiner from ACFE, USA. He has conducted investigation of 120 plus cases of financial crime and dispute resolution. He has been awarded commendation letters on 2 counts by Director General of Police, Gujarat, for exemplary investigation of financial crimes. Durgesh ji has conducted workshops on investigation at Brahmin, Kenya, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Malaysia. I would like to welcome Sri Durgesh Pandeji to please start with the session for today, which is opportunities for financial investigation. Durgesh sir.
Thank you, Sampurna. First of all, heartiest congratulations to Nihar sir, and as always, thank you very much, Nanda sir, for having us back again. It's always a pleasure and delight to speak with members at Disapora. We have been constantly being engaged and speaking with our members, particularly of ICAI. But then whenever we get an opportunity to interact with the membership of SAFA, we have a wider audience, and then there's a sense of excitement amongst us also to speak with our neighbors. Probably this is a medium, though we don't have a dialogue, we have a monologue. The listening is more to them, and then the question answers are limited. But still, I always grab the opportunity whenever I get. So once again, thanks to the leadership team at our DAB, Nanda sir, Dayaniva Sharma ji, and heartiest congratulations to the new team of SAFA. So, friends, opportunity, as it is a very apt topic, because we have seen that in the present times, in the present era, you must have come across a bunch of courses, including one that we are having at ICAI, the certificate course. There are many number of courses in the forensic practice, as both of our leadership team told that this will become mainstream, and the existing compliance-based practice, what we are doing, we see a very restricted role of that. Of course, stat audit can never be replaced. Stat audit can never go. That is a function. Nevertheless, these new age area of practice, they will become mainstream. And I understand that they are the next growth drivers. One more point before I put my formal presentation, one more point which is very important, and I'm very happy that President Safa, he raised this point. You know, the expectations from the auditors, and there's a mismatch between what we do and what is expected from us. The problem is that whenever a regulator, I have been working a lot with law enforcement agencies. You'll see in my presentation also, I have put the name of the agencies with which we have worked, and probably you may be having such agencies or agencies similar to them in your jurisdiction. The problem with the agencies and stakeholders, particularly the law enforcement agencies and the courts, are that it is presumed that once the financial statements are being audited by chartered accountant, they become sacrosanct. There cannot be any error, any fraud, any mistake. However, our mandate under statutory audit is altogether different. We are giving reasonable assurance based on materiality. Now, these two words, they change the entire game. And, you know, we become the soft targets in most of the investigations. So this is something which we have to keep in mind while we explore the area. Yes, of course, there are some occupational hazards, but the standards which is being brought out by the leadership team, and I remember Jambu Saria sir was the one to launch those standards on 31st August. So that is something which, those standards will be helping us a lot, and they are something where professionals can fall back that, yes, this is the work which I have done. This is my apex body in my country which prescribes that this is how the work should be done. So friends, let me just share my screen and introduce my presentation. Yeah. So I hope my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir. Screen is visible.
So we are discussing new avenues and opportunities. Now, a few things. It's not a very long presentation, just 18 slides, including the first and the last slide. So all in all, we'll be having around 15 slides. You can put your questions in the chat box, probably at the end of my session, because I'll be disconnecting at 7:30. I have a engagement, so I'll be going there. So what I can do is the last 5-10 minutes, I'll be asking the moderator if there are some questions, I'll be answering them. And then I'll be concluding, because I'll not be available at the end of the session to take all the questions. End of the session as in end of the day.
Yes,
After
sir. Yes,
both the
sir. No
sessions.
problem.
Okay. Now, as we see, we start with certain facts about frauds. We need to understand that the moment we'll call forensic practice, the forensic practice is not just limited to only frauds detection. There's a key and very important aspect which is called as fraud prevention, where there is a lot of business. Okay, we'll come to that at a later point of time. There are certain axioms, there are certain facts, there are certain presumptions about fraud, which is always true, or which is, I would say, mostly true, generally true. So as per the survey is being conducted by the ACFE. As per this survey, 5% of global revenue is lost to frauds, and fraud is always intentional and deliberate. Please understand, the only difference between a mistake and the fraud is intention. Whenever you allege that somebody has committed fraud, the most important aspect is to get a guilty mind or mens rea or deliberate act. And it is also very important to know or to understand that the most difficult part to prove in any case is the guilty mind or the mens rea or the deliberate attempt. So that is the crucial part, and that is also the most difficult part. Okay, now next what you see is fraud is always hidden. There's a survey and research which says that in 95% of the cases, efforts are put in to conceal the frauds. Okay, efforts are put in to conceal the fraud, and fraud is always hidden. Now, please understand what we mean by this is that, and this is where I would say that when our President Safa, when he was telling that we have the expectations from the stakeholders is increasing day by day. Please understand, our existing audit procedures are only sufficient to give a reasonable assurance of true and fair view. Whereas the mandate and expectation in a forensic investigation is altogether different. Okay, we are having little bit of flavor of what is a forensic investigation, how a forensic investigation is done, and what is the outcome of that, along with the areas as to where we can do the work, where we can solicit work. Okay, so what I mean to say here is that because efforts are put in to hide the fraud, every debit will be having an equal credit. Only then the fraud will be hidden. And please understand, there are deliberate attempts to hide the fraud. Our existing audit procedures which we have, they are not directed to find frauds. Okay, they can only get outliers. Whereas in a forensic investigation, you have to do detailed, you have to do a detailed analysis, detailed investigation, and your job is to determine whether the fraud has happened and get the facts of the case. Okay. Moving ahead. This is the definition of fraud. As I said, the crucial element in the definition is the center, that is intentional knowledge or wrongdoing. It is fraud is an abuse of our expectation of fair treatment by fellow human being. Okay, it's an abuse of our expectation by fair treatment by fellow human being, and a false representation of material nature. The person should have relied, and there has to be a financial damage. If all the ingredients are satisfied, only then fraud is said to happen. Okay, only then fraud is said to happen. Now, in case of forensic investigators, as we are discussing about the opportunities for forensic investigators, say, I'll tell you, I always discuss in most of my workshop, and I say that probably a professional accountant with more than, I'm using the generic word professional accountant because I understand we may not be having chartered accountants in all the jurisdictional countries of SAFA. So that is why the word professional accountant who's having probably 10 years of experience is in a very good position to conduct a forensic investigation. Okay. Now, why my biasness with 10 years of experience? Because a period of 10 years is considered as big enough or wide enough. A career of 10 years is considered as wide enough, deep enough to cover a large number of companies. Okay. But it is always desirable to have certain prerequisites and certain pre-qualifications if one wants to present himself as a specialist in the fraud and forensic domain. So there are some basic expectations from the professional accountant if he wants to pitch himself as a forensic expert. Now, these requirements are though desirable, but not mandatory. These requirements are desirable, but not mandatory. However, if you have a background and a credential, these qualifications help you to stand out. These qualifications will help you to stand out, and you will be different from the crowd which pitches for the work. So what are those basic academic requirements? So the basic academic requirement which is expected from a professional accountant if he wants to come into a forensic is first background in accounting, a strong background, financial forensics. Because this is on opportunity, I'm not discussing a lot about financial and forensics. Nevertheless, the key work in a forensic investigation is a paralegal activity. The professional accountant does a paralegal activity or litigation support activity where he gives a statement of fact and probably opinion on certain aspect which is required, which is technical, whereby the professional says as to what has happened in the case. In most of the cases, it ends with quantification of the amount of loss or quantification of the amount of dispute. Okay. So, because most of the cases are complex and most of the cases are technical, they require a strong and thorough knowledge of finance and accounting system. That is why it's always preferred and recommended to have a background in accounting, a strong background in accounting. Okay. Next, if we see a strong background in information system is also desirable. See, most of the investigation, in fact, most of the work now in an accountant's office or in any office for that matter, because we will be investigating the client. so in any office, is around the computer or with relation to the computer. The first job, when you land up an investigation, the first job which you need to do is to secure the computer, take a data backup, take the mobile backup, secure the IT assets, and create a copy of those IT assets. That would be your first job. Now, probably you may have someone in your team to do this job. You directly need not do this job. However, a strong knowledge of information system is required so that you can direct your team or you can guide your team as to how to do the job. Also, in most of the cases, in fact, it is always said that the cases or the drafting of the report is to be done keeping in mind that this report will be a subject matter of litigation. The drafting of report should be done keeping in mind that the report is subject matter of the litigation. Okay. Now, before starting the assignment, you presume that there will be litigation, you need to have strong credentials and strong knowledge about all the facets of that particular area. Okay. Similarly, background in legal aspects is also important. Okay. See, as I said, most of the cases end up in litigation. So the difference between cognizable, non-cognizable, bailable, non-bailable, compoundable, non-compoundable, and specific section of the Indian Penal Code like 405, 420, 416, 416 to 420, 468, 470, 471, 406, 409. These are certain sections which are generally invoked in case of financial crime. Okay, that is breach of trust, criminal conspiracy, which is 120B, or fraud, forging documents, using of the forged document, forging security, forging will. These are certain documents which you handle day in and day out in case you have this. Even if you investigate a small case where there is falsification of invoices or expense reimbursement, unnecessary expense, or the expenses have been padded and there's an expense reimbursement case, most of these sections will be applied because he's an employee, there's a breach of trust, there may be more than one or there'll be more than two. You will be requiring some legal knowledge because there'll be criminal conspiracy, they'll be forging some documents, they'll be using those forged documents. So a strong background in legal aspect is expected and is recommended. Last but not the least, preference to certifications. Now, this is something which may not be mandatory in your jurisdiction. In fact, in India also, it's still not mandatory that all forensic investigators have FAFD qualification. But it is at the same time, it is being observed that it's strongly preferable that whosoever conducts the investigation has a specific qualification, academic qualification relating to the fraud and forensic domain. Okay, so certifications like FAFD, which is offered by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, it is called as Forensic Accounting and Fraud Detection. It's a flagship course which is spread over 7 days, classroom course, mentor-led discussion, and some 40-50 hours of e-learning. All these courses help you to stand out. Similarly, you have CFF, Certified Financial Forensics. This qualification is for Certified Public Accountants of USA. Okay, and then we have the most generic one, which does not has some prerequisite membership, is the CFE, Certified Fraud Examiners. Now, these qualifications, I'm again and again telling that these are not mandatory. You need not do this to do the investigation. However, if you pitch, whenever you bid, whenever you want to do a investigation, and if you have these specific qualifications, your application, your pitch, your bid is ought to stand out because you are having specialized qualification. Okay, you are having specialized qualification. Let us move ahead. This is the definition of forensic accounting. This is the definition of forensic accounting. So all of you, let me explain as to what is the expectation when you charter in this domain. I said that there are some occupational hazards in this domain. Okay, so what is forensic accounting and what is expected from you? Forensic accounting is discovery and evaluation of evidence. Forensic accounting is discovery and evaluation of evidence by a professional to interpret and communicate findings which are suitable for a court of law. Okay, so the Latin word forensis, the word forensic comes from the Latin word forensis, meaning acceptable before a forum. So the idea is to discover evidences. The idea is to discover evidences, and those evidences should be acceptable by a forum. Okay, those evidences should be acceptable by a forum. That is the idea. Okay. Now, everything what you do in an investigation should be documented, because as I'm telling you, please be prepared for a litigation thereafter. In most of the cases, your report will become a subject matter of litigation, and the ultimate conclusion will be with litigation only, because your report may be used to file an insurance claim, which may be a dispute, or kick somebody out of the company, or recover money from someone. That is why your report becomes a subject matter of litigation. Okay. Now next, as you'll notice, the forensic standards which have been issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, they have two things. First of all, we refrain from calling the audit as forensic audit. Globally, the practice is called as forensic accounting, and it is not called as forensic audit. So we should prefer calling this as forensic accounting instead of forensic audit. Okay. Next, what we have is, if you see the standards, it is called as Forensic Accounting and Investigation Standards, FAIS. Now, if we talk about Forensic Accounting and Investigation Standards, the first portion is Forensic Accounting, which we discussed. The next one is Investigative Review. So, Forensic Accounting is an area where the knowledge of accounts and finance is important, and an opinion or fact is expressed based on the analysis and discovery of the financial records. Whereas an investigative review may be a broader term. It may be a broader term which would include even the operational aspects. So something like stealing of stock, or something like, I can tell you, we were appointed in a case in Gujarat, which was in Gujarat, my state in India. We were appointed on a case wherein we were appointed by a law enforcement agency, where our role was merely to check the stock records, because it's a very controversial case. So in the same case, our role was to check the stock records, because the product which is the subject matter of the case, even 10 ml of that product can be fatal. It can kill a human life. So the cases become very sensitive in such situation. So investigative review, other than forensic, is where you have operational aspect, where you check the expense reimbursement, where you check the production capacity and things like that. That comes in the investigative review domain. Okay. Again, obtaining evidence, interviewing, writing report, and testifying. These are essential ingredients of the entire assignment. Okay. You are expected to interview, you are expected to write report, you are expected to testify in court of law. Okay. This comes under the domain of forensic review, investigative review. This is sometimes loosely called as forensic audit also. Okay. Now, just to give a flavor as to what is the difference, we are talking about the opportunities. If we are talking about the opportunities, we need to understand the difference between the three areas, the difference between the conventional auditing, the fraud examination, and the financial forensics. Okay. If you can see, we have put the issues and the differences. Like, let me just explain few points to you. Auditing is a regular activity and it occurs on a regular basis. Based on the accounting year, we have auditing which happens on regular basis. Okay. Next comes fraud examination. Okay. Next comes fraud examination. Fraud examination is not regular. You cannot have a periodicity as to this is the periodicity when fraud examination happens. Similarly, financial forensics are also not regular. They are both incidence based. Okay. So fraud examination is conducted when there is a fraud, when there is a underlying offense. Okay. Whereas financial forensics are conducted probably to quantify the amount, to check into the allegations, to just move ahead from the allegations. Okay. Now, the scope, if you will see, in case of auditing, the scope is general. It is expression of opinion on the material misstatements. However, in both the cases, fraud examination and financial forensics, it is resolving. In fraud examination, it is resolving the allegation as to whether the person committed the offense or not. The objective is to resolve that. However, we are not supposed to express opinion, but that is the objective. And here, in financial forensics, it is the investigative review that you do, that you have to answer the particular question. Okay. Relationship is something which differentiates all the three. So whereas in case of auditing, an opinion is expressed. In case of auditing, an opinion is expressed. In case of fraud examination, blame is affixed. Okay. Blame is affixed as to the fraud examiner's goal is to determine whether the fraud has occurred and who's responsible. However, in financial forensics, determining financial impact is important. So skepticism is important in auditing, whereas the role becomes adversarial in case of fraud examination, that is affixing blame. However, the person has to remain independent in case of financial forensics. Okay. So these are some of the crucial differences. These are some of the crucial differences between financial forensics and conventional audit. Okay. Now, friends, if you can see on your screen, we have two things. Okay. This is the crux when you want to start a new practice or when you venture into the financial forensic domain. Okay. When you venture into the financial forensic domain, this is the crux. This is something which you have to keep in mind. Now, what do we mean by this? So essentially, if same set of procedures are applied to same set of data, if same set of procedures are applied to same set of data, they will be yielding same set of results. So you have to come out of, whenever you do a forensic investigation, you have to come out of your conventional mindset. You have to have come out of your thought process of the conventional way of auditing. Okay. If similar set of procedures are applied to similar set of data, they will yield same result. So what you need to do, you need to have out of the box thinking. Okay. You need to have out of the box thinking. Now, how do you have out of the box thinking? How do you have out of the box thinking? There are certain approaches. Okay. Now this may be called, or this is called as lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is not thinking in straight line, but it is thinking out of the box. It is creative thinking, indirect thinking. It is thinking by way of reasoning, which is not immediately obvious. It is using logic and using steps which are not obvious to a human mind. Okay. Disregarding the implied rules. That is a very important statement. So if you can see on the screen, the question is that you have to reach from A to B. There's nowhere written that you have to follow the boxes. Okay. So if you just see the question, you assume the rules. Whereas if you go for lateral thinking, you'll notice that the presumed rules are disregarded. Okay, presumed rules are disregarded. Again, these are certain techniques for lateral thinking. How do you think? For those who are keen to develop their lateral thinking, there's a book by Edward de Bono on lateral thinking. Okay, he has written some techniques. Edward de Bono. Okay, there are YouTube videos also as to how to think laterally, and on your screen you can see few concepts how to think laterally. So mind map, creating a mind map. I cannot go into detailing of all the points as to how to create a mind map. Brainstorming among the team members, reverse solution as to knowing the solution first and then trying to find a way. Cross-fertilization is implanting different ideas, taking ideas from different sections. Like I'll tell you, in forensics, we have certain techniques which have nothing to do with accounts or audit or systems. Okay. We have something called as genograms, which is how we find the relationship amongst the fraudsters or the accused person. Okay. Genogram is a technique which is taken from psychology. So it is cross-fertilization, cross-fertilizing the mind to think laterally. And next is problem switching the problem with a different set of problem. So these are certain techniques which help in lateral thinking, in thinking in a different, novel, unique way. Okay. Now, let us move ahead, coming to the core area where we were discussing the opportunities. Sampurna, if you can let me know if we have questions, because I like to answer the questions as and when we have, okay? Because we may not have time in the end to answer the questions.
Yes, sir. Okay, I will see if there are any questions. As of now, there are none, so you can. As of now, there are none, so you can please continue. If they come.
Yeah. So what you can do is you can put it in the chat box, in our chat box. So probably I can answer them while going. Okay.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, no problem.
Yeah. So we were discussing about the practice area. Now, the practice area, as I said, is typically bifurcated into two parts. Okay. Forensic practice can be bifurcated into two parts. First is preventive forensics or proactive activity. this happens before the fraud is detected. Okay. Preventive forensics is before the fraud is detected. Okay. These are certain preventive activity. Now, please understand the cost of prevention is always less than detection. Okay. So this is one area where I would request all professional accountants who want to start a career in this forensic domain to focus upon. Okay. This area is very lucrative, and this area the forensics professional should focus upon. Okay. Please understand the second area of practice, which I have mentioned, is detective practice or reactive activity. This is called as reactive activity because this happens once the fraud is discovered. Okay. This happens once the fraud is discovered. Now, please note that it's difficult to solicit work in detective activity. Okay. It is difficult to solicit work in detective activity. It is relatively easy to solicit work in preventive activity. Why? What is the problem? The problem is that in case of detective activity, everyone looks for a experienced hand. Okay. So if you are a new entrant and you want to enter into the practice area, the chances of you landing up a detection activity is less, because nobody would like to give reins in a fraud to somebody who is not having certain experience. I understand it becomes the case of chicken and the egg, which is first, but this is how it is. Okay. You form a team, you work with the team, and then you can get the work on your own. But to all youngsters, all new practitioners, to all people who are keen to enter this area, I would say that preventive forensics is the way forward. Now, what is preventive forensics? It is a proactive forensic activity before the allegation of fraud emerges. Okay. Before the allegation of fraud emerges. Now, the most commoditized area in preventive forensics is called as fraud risk assessment. Okay. Fraud risk assessment. What is meant by fraud risk assessment? So fraud risk assessment in itself is a 6 hours topic, with when we do with illustrations, examples, Excel sheets, templates, and process flowchart. We are of course not going into that detail, but let me very quickly explain what is fraud risk assessment. Say, I'll tell you, we have something called as internal control assessment, which I am sure most of the professional accountants must have studied at some point of time and must be practicing now. Fraud risk assessment is one step ahead than the internal control assessment. Okay. One step ahead than the internal control assessment. Now, how do you do a fraud risk assessment? Or is there a mandate as to whether fraud risk assessment is to be done? The answer is that there's no mandate on fraud risk assessment. Businesses, based on their own assessment and perception, get a fraud risk assessment done. How a fraud risk assessment is done? It is done by preparing a complete and detailed process map and finding the vulnerabilities in such processes. That is fraud risk assessment. Okay. Now, the ACFE, Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, recommends that large companies should do biannual fraud risk assessment. Okay. Large companies should do a biannual fraud risk assessment. So, where is the opportunity? If you have studied in detail the concept of fraud risk assessment, you can pitch this fraud risk assessment concept to your existing set of clients. Okay, you can pitch this fraud risk assessment concept to your existing set of clients. Okay, please understand, in any practice area, whenever you start something new, the first clients, the first set of customers are people who are known to you. They are bound and ought to trust you. So they are the pool where you need to tap for the fraud risk assessment. Okay. So I've got a question as to, is there any scope for empanelment? Although I have the certificate holder of forensic audit and fraud detection issued by ICAI. For SMP, small and medium practitioners, how one can avail the assignments, as the assignments are major allotted to bigger firms? See, friends, I understand the anguish with which the new practitioners write, but then see, everybody is born young, everybody starts his practice young, and then everybody has to get old, and everybody becomes old. You have to just be patient for your time. Now, few specific answers to the question as to, is there a scope for empanelment? Yes, there are certain agencies which go for empanelment, but trust me, I am doing this since past, so my practice is almost about 15 years, and I am doing this exclusively for the past 5-7 years. I am exclusively into investigative practice for the 5-7 years. Trust me, you cannot survive without a team. So if you think that you will be getting a case, and probably from that case you can build up a practice, trust me, unless you have a team, it will become very difficult for you to shine. 1 or 2 erratic case may give you some exposure, but to develop a full-fledged practice, you need a team. Now, the moment we say team, you have to either partner with someone, you have to join someone, or you have to get partners, you have to get employees who can do certain skills. Okay. Now, for digital forensics, you cannot say that I'll be investigating the financial aspect, but mujhe data ka backup lene nahi aata hai. I don't know how to take backup of the data. Get the data, backup of the data, and then I'll do the digital forensic. No, that doesn't work. You have to have a team where you offer both these services. Now, this can only happen if you have a team, if you have a group, only then it can happen. So it's nothing like that something is reserved only for big people, big firms, or something reserved for small firms. I understand, see, I am a first generation chartered accountant. I started in a city like Ahmedabad, and I understand there's enough fish for everybody in the ocean. Okay. It is how you maneuver your skill set, how you develop yourself, and how you pitch your services. Probably, as I'm telling again and again, detection may be difficult, but prevention is easy. With our existing qualification, with our existing skill set, prevention is easy. Okay. There are certain internal control framework. The COSO framework is one of the most famous framework. Okay. This framework can be altered and modified and implemented in an organization to prevent the frauds or to do a health checkup. Okay. To do a health checkup. I hope I have answered your question. Whosoever has put as to for SMP, how can one avail the assignments? There's no formula. There's no empanelment that you get empaneled here and then work starts flowing. There's nothing like that you do this course and then work starts flowing. My friends, please understand, there's no qualification which guarantees that you will be flooded with work. Okay. We are having a very good qualification, and I'm sure it gives us immense work. Okay. So coming to implementation of the framework. This is again a preventive area of practice where the professional accountant can help in implementing the framework. The COSO framework or the COSO cube can be implemented in a particular size of organization. I am sure a lot of you must have studied the COSO framework in your, probably I understand now it is there in CA final. Way back when we passed, we didn't add the COSO framework in the CA final syllabus. We have studied later on. But COSO framework or any framework is not a simple topic. It requires continuous reading, continuous understanding. It requires examples and case study as to how the framework is implemented. So your lack of experience, the lack of experience which you are having in conducting the actual cases, in doing the actual cases, this lack of experience should be compensated by way of academic reading, reading about cases, reading about case studies, reading about new concept, reading about new things. Okay, unless and until you do that, you cannot augment your skills. So your skills needs to be constantly upgraded, and that is only possible if you are engaged in continuous reading. Okay, if you are not reading, if you don't work, because see, this is a new area. Please understand, there's no fixed format of a report. You have been assigned a job of a due diligence. Okay, sure, we are having due diligence. Now you have been assigned a task of due diligence or background verification of borrowers or investors. How do you write a report? What do you put in a due diligence report? What do you write in a background verification report? So all these things, all these areas can only be written, can only be done if you keep on reading and upgrading. You may not have core accounting books which deal with due diligence, but then if you read few books, few topics, several articles and literature which explain as to what is due diligence, then you can marry what you have learned with the expectation from your client. Okay, you can do, and you can find a midway between that as to what the client expects and what you are doing. Okay, and then a report can be prepared. So I always say, in all the workshop also I say, and in all the live classes also, I do say that please augment your existing knowledge with strong academic reading. So due diligence is also an area. Background verification for borrowers and investees is also an area where preventive forensics can be applied, and this is an area where work can be solicited. Okay. Next, we have cyber security and hardening of systems. Now, say if there is an incidence, if there is a malicious email, if there is a data theft, if there is a ransomware attack, if something like this happens, or if something like this is happening in the country, probably we are in trying times, something like this is happening every day. Even a prestigious hospital in New Delhi, like AIMS, was also not secure. So this calls for cyber security and hardening of the systems. This is one area where we can play an important role, and you can get work, you can solicit work in this area. Cyber security, hardening of system, determination of the delegation of authority matrix, designing the segregation of authority. So delegation of authority, segregation of authority, we being process experts, professional accountants being process experts, can, these process experts, we are in a very good space to advise the clients on the process weakening and process vulnerabilities. So this hardening will prevent frauds which are happening in the business. So this is one area where you can pitch in. I see a question where it is written that, can we draw parallel from health investigations as well as post-mortem carried out in medical science for forensic accounting? What is forensic accounting? I would request the I would request the participant to please read the definition. Forensic accounting is related to accounting. I don't know what is how you relate it to postmortem, but the idea is to give evidences which are acceptable before a court of law. It's a paralegal activity. Okay, so this is I understand I have got few more comments, but they are more of a feedback nature and not questions. I don't know how do I answer. I'm being asked about next course, when it will be conducted in India and where. I really don't have a answer. There are some suggestions to discuss on the lateral thinking, where we can discuss in detail about lateral thinking. Probably that is one suggestion which you can send to the board and Nandaji. In future, probably we can have a small session on lateral thinking, or you can connect with me. I can give you some books to read, some content, some literature I can share with you, where you can read that. Please understand, this is all self-study. The more you study, the more knowledgeable you become. And then we are living in a knowledge democracy, where most of the information is available on YouTube. So no one can stop you from becoming intelligent. If you read more, you learn more, and you'll practice more. And trust me, I am telling, if I can do it, so can you. If I can do it, so can you, and you'll be having ample work if you do good work. Okay. Let us move forward. I am being asked to discuss case studies. I am sorry, I don't think we have the time and the mandate to discuss case studies today. If I'll have the time, I'll try to discuss a small case study. Okay. Let us move forward. This is about detective forensics. Okay. This is about detective forensics. So as I said, that the forensic practice area is bifurcated into two parts. Okay. The first one we discussed, that was about preventive forensics. Okay. So again, I'm telling, it is relatively easier to get into the preventive forensic domain. It is relatively difficult to get into detective forensic domain. I'm not telling it is impossible. Of course, you can get in. It requires a little bit more persistence and perseverance. Okay. Now, what is detective forensics? And I'll tell you why it is difficult in detective forensics. See, I always use the example in my live classes. At least I use the example where I say that, say you want to go for a minor surgery. Okay. Or your one of your loved ones want to go for a orthopedic knee replacement surgery. Now, if you get a doctor who has studied from the best of the institutes, who has studied from best of the literature, who has topped his class, who's academically so thorough that no one is as thorough in the past 4 years or 5 years, and you have an alternative of going with a mediocre doctor who has done about 100 surgeries, which will you choose? The obvious answer in most cases will be the second doctor. You know, it's a very sensitive topic. And because this is so sensitive, that is why whenever detective activity or whenever detective forensics is being given, it is always preferred that it should be given to someone who's mature and who has the expertise of handling such cases, who has a history of handling such cases. Okay. So it is important in detective forensics to have an experience. But then, yes, without experience, how do you start? You'll get your time. You will start. Okay. One more reason, answering the question that why large firms are chosen. You know, there are certain reasons as to why large firms are chosen over small firms. You know, technically, even I didn't get an assignment despite being technically qualified on all counts. The only procedure, only lab session was that my firm is not 15 years old. So even we didn't get that assignment, despite having all the credentials and qualifications and also matching the pricing. So you have to wait for a time. There are certain things, they'll happen only when they are ought to happen. You cannot force it to happen. Okay. So why large firms are chosen? Large firms are chosen because of few things. First, they offer continuity. What do we mean by continuity? So it may so happen that in a firm, one of the partner who's looking after the assignment may have certain family emergency, certain health issues, certain other commitments where he may not be available for that assignment for probably a considerable period of time. And please understand, these are all time specific assignments. These are all time. The client will be in panic mode for few days and he would like you to give a reasonable assurance in those few days. Once his panic goes on decreasing, his interest in the forensic assignment goes on diminishing. Okay, so these are strong time-bound assignments. Okay, so they want continuity. That is why they choose large firms with huge resources so that the continuity is not hampered. Okay, second thing, large firm have a strong knowledge base and a particular revenue flow where the revenue flow from this particular assignment is not so significant that the integrity, there's a question of integrity being compromised. Okay, there may be a question of integrity may be compromised. Third thing, if someone is new in the profession, he may not have those a holistic approach to look at the entire problem. Okay, he may see the case and the problems in isolation. Okay, that is the reason why large firms are chosen. So detective forensics this is a post-fraud investigation. Okay, and it is mostly a litigation support activity. What do we mean by litigation support activity? So the chartered accountant's role is a paralegal role where the accountant does litigation support activity. So what is the role? The role here is to discover evidences, present them in a report form, and then this report should be acceptable by a court of law. Okay, so you don't argue, the professional accountant does not argue, but he does all the legwork to discover the evidences, to present the case, which the advocate, the attorney, or the solicitor will argue in a court of law, and the entire argument or substantial portion of the argument will be dependent on the expertise of the professional accountant's evidence discovery. Okay, so it's a litigation support activity, it's investigation and discovery for evidence. Please understand, don't write anything in the report, evidence of which you're not having or which is gray. Don't presume anything. I remember while drafting the standards, we were in a meeting in Hyderabad and we had one of the lead partners of one of the largest firms. He was discussing his experience on the report writing. He was telling that every word of our report is backed by evidence. He was telling not just sentence. Every word of the report is backed by sentence. Evidence. Every word of the report is backed by evidence. Okay. Now, quantification and reporting forms essential portion of the detective forensics. So in most of the cases, there has to be quantification done. In case of, say, an insurance dispute, where a fire has occurred and there are allegations on the insured by the insurance company that the insured has done has used malified intention and he has committed some misdoings, in such a situation, in such a case, the role of the professional accountant is quantification. This quantification is done based on specific parameters which may be there, or he has to devise his own set of parameters by his logic. Now, I was told, let me see, it's 7:11, so I have another 20 minutes. Let me just discuss I'll give you a small flavor of a case that we did. So probably that will satisfy the curiosity of someone who told me that some case study. See, I'll tell you, we did a case from the claimant side for an insurance company. Okay. Now, from the claimant side, we did our client was from the claimant. Okay, for an insurance related dispute. In that case, the claimant was into oil seed processing unit. So he used to press the oil, and then he used to press the seeds, and then he used to get the oil. Okay. Now a fire broke, and then there were a lot of disputes. Okay. The claimant was telling that his claim is around what? 335 crores. So 35 crores is 35 crore Indian rupee, whereas the insurance company was telling that the claim is only 8 crores or 9 crore Indian rupee. So it was a huge gap, almost 4 times. The insurance company was giving only 25% of the claim. So we were appointed by the claimant to give an independent opinion. Now, when we saw the surveyor's report, the surveyor's report, they to store the oil, they have steel silos. Okay, steel containers. Okay, cylindrical containers they have where the oils are stored. Now, to check the residue oil as to how much oil is there in the silo, the surveyor had written in his report that sound method was used to check the quantity of the oil. Please understand what is sound method. Sound method is nothing but you pick a stone and then you knock on the silo, you'll get a sound. The empty portion will give a different type of sound than the filled portion. Okay, so sound method was used to detect the empty portion and the filled portion. That was sound method. Now, the question is, where is the scientific reasoning? Where is a scientific reasoning for all those who are wondering as to what is the sound method? You can try checking when you go to take bath. If you knock on the bucket, the sound in the bucket which is filled will be different from the sound in the bucket which is empty, okay, which is not filled. So that was the sound method. Now, please understand, there is no academic literature which states that oil stock can be measured by sound method. There were different methods which were prescribed for measuring the oil stock, sound method not being the one. So that is how we help the advocate to demolish this claim as to sound method is a scientific method. There are periscopic glass method, there is the dipping of the rod method, and other volumetric method as well. Sound was not the method. Now, why I'm telling this? Because quantification and reporting is integral part in detective forensics. And this quantification can only be done. I was also told lateral thinking. So this is also an example of lateral thinking as to how do you think out of the box? How do you demolish a counterparty's claim? And how do you create a platform where your solicitor, your advocate, your counsel can argue in your favor? You have to give him points. You have to give him points as to this and this is wrong, which is not possible. He is a specialist in law, whereas you are a domain expert. Okay. Then again, there's also one point called as testification in court of law. Okay. Testification in court of law. Now, testification in court of law is also an important area in detective forensics. You have to testify in a court of law. And there are guidelines by Honorable Supreme Court which say that the author of the report, the author of a technical report, has to defend his own report if that has to have a evidentiary value. Okay, that has to have a evidentiary value. I have a question that if no presumptions are to be covered in the report, then whether any limitation as to evidence needs to be listed out. See, I'll tell you, anything which has a limitation is not a good quality evidence. So you have to give a perimeter. I don't say limitation. You have to determine a perimeter. You have to determine a boundary and a wall, and you have to give everything within that boundary and wall. If you start writing subjective sentences, then the evidentiary value is questioned. Please understand the definition of evidence, and the purpose of evidence is to induce belief in the minds of the judges. Induce belief. And please also remember that the quality of evidence in case of investigative audits, is very high, because these carry criminal charges. The quality of evidence is that they should be beyond reasonable doubt. It is not preponderance of justice. It is beyond reasonable doubt. Okay. So if it is beyond reasonable doubt, then the quality of evidence has to be very strong. Okay. So presumptions will become very difficult. Okay. Please refrain from presumptions. Presumptions can be used to start the investigation, but presumptions cannot be part of your report as to based on this presumptions you are giving these decisions. No, that is a difficult area in case of at least where there are criminal charges. Okay. I have a question. What is the legal authenticity of the forensic auditor in the court of law? See, I'll tell you, there's no qualification as forensic audit. Okay. So it totally depends on the expertise that you provide in the case. Depending on the facts of the case and depending on the requirement of the case, if your qualification is good enough and if you can demonstrate that you have done adequate number of jobs of similar nature where your opinion had value, then I'm sure you can have a legal authenticity of speaking in court of law or testifying in court of law. Otherwise, you are on a sticky wicket. Okay. Let me move forward. I have last couple of slides. I also see my colleague CA Uday Kulkarni has joined. So let me just finish in next 10 minutes. Okay. So opportunity available in the detective area. Let us discuss about the opportunities which are available in the detections domain. So fraud risk assessment, where fraud has happened. Okay. Then incidents reporting, developing of whistleblower policies. So incidents reporting is where isolated incidents happen in organizations, like where a particular malicious email has come. There is, there's usage of what the email has been hacked and then remittance information has been shared. Okay. Such cases, such incidents, you can give a report on the incidents, and then offshoot from there is hardening of the system so that such incidences don't happen in future. Development of a whistleblower policy. Okay. Development of a whistleblower policy. What do we understand by that? In most large organization, and I'm sure most of you would know that the most prominent way to detect a fraud is by anonymous tips. Anonymous tips are the strongest way how frauds are detected. Now, how do you create a culture of getting more and more tips? That is through development of whistleblower policies. So, development of whistleblower policies is again a important area where this can happen. It can be used both in prevention and in detection. Okay. Next, we have IBC forensics. Please understand the word used under insolvency. This is particularly for India, and I'm sure if you are listening to me from other jurisdiction, I'm sure you will be having a bankruptcy law in your country, and this is insolvency and bankruptcy code. In the insolvency and bankruptcy code, to insulate the buyer, whosoever is buying this going concern, to insulate such buyers from tainted or infected transactions, the code gives power to the resolution professional to nullify those transactions, to request the authority and nullify those transactions. Okay. Now, who investigates the tainted or infected transactions? Who investigates the tainted or infected transactions? That is job of the transaction auditor. Okay. Here we have something called as transaction auditor in the Indian insolvency and the bankruptcy code. There you have certain specific section from 43 to 50 and section 66. These are called as PUFE transactions. In most of the cases, the banks do get a forensic investigation done, and at the same time, the resolution professional, whenever he is appointed, he also prefers to get a forensic investigation done. Okay. Next is bank loan forensics. That is what I was telling. In many cases, the banks get forensics done when the account turns bad. The area covered is few years. Okay. In most of the cases, it is from the date of disbursal of the loan, and based on the report of the investigator, based on the report of the professional accountant, the banks may take a call to classify the person as a willful defaulter. Okay. Next, we have market research and forensics. What is meant by market research and forensics? In many cases, in fact, I have seen case where a market research agency, they try to find as to what is the market share, what is the area under operation, what is the quantity being produced. Such data can also be found by way of investigation. Okay. There are certain concept called as non-financial data. Probably sometimes when we can have a session on non-financial data, they give certain insights which even financial data cannot give. So these non-financial data are used by market research agencies to find frauds, to find anomalies, to find misdoings. Okay. Then we have pre-placement due diligence. Pre-placement due diligence, wheresoever a company is looking for some money, the company is looking for some investment opportunity as to somebody will be investing in the company, the investor may do a pre-placement due diligence of the company, or the company can do a pre-placement due diligence of the investor as well, to check the source of the fund, to check his market credibility, to check his reputation, so on and so forth. Okay. So these are pre-placement diligence. Then you have actual income profiling. These are again opportunities. Actual income profiling. There are certain banks which appoint professionals to determine the actual income, because the formal mechanism of knowing the income and telling the income from the financial statement is not strong enough in our country. So we have actual income profiling as well. This is also a opportunity. Now, I see a question which is written that what is the difference between presumption and hypothesis? Please understand, hypothesis is a scientific term whereby you form a statement You form a statement and then you test those statements. Whereas presumption is a belief based on which you start the investigation. Okay, based on which you start the investigation. So they may be very similar. Hypothesis is a more scientific term and it's more defined in a research context. Okay, let us move forward. This is again the detection opportunities. I have tried to list out the law enforcement agencies in our country, in India at least. So those who are from India, they can see the list of the law enforcement agencies. Please note, all these agencies engage professional accountants in one form or other, either formally or informally, to help them in the investigation because of the unique skill sets that the professionals bring. Okay, the Central Bureau of Investigation, the Serious Fraud Investigating Office, the Enforcement Directorate, State Police, Economic Offense Wing, Anti-Corruption Bureau, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, GST, Goods and Service Tax Intelligence Wing, Income Tax Investigation Wing, all these wings, these are enforcement departments. All these departments, they operate under different law, and all these have an opportunity in their department. Yes, getting the opportunity is difficult in them. Cracking the first case is difficult, but yes, once you are there, you get a lot of name and reputation once you work with them. Probably the money may not be very lucrative, but the satisfaction that you're doing good for the country and the satisfaction that your knowledge is being used to put fraudsters behind the bar is something which gives you a different kind of high. Okay, so these agencies also help in getting the opportunities. Okay, I mean, these opportunity agencies can also be used for the opportunity. So with this, I understand my portion. I have completed my portion. You know, when conviction and determination prevents us from exploring options, we limit our potential to think critically. You need to think critically. You need to think out of the box. You need to think different in order to solve a case. Okay, education is the kindling of a flame and not filling of a vessel. Education is like lighting a flame. It's like igniting the mind. It's not like filling a bucket or filling a tumbler for that purpose, that you fill it with everything, you fill it to the brim. It is like igniting a flame which enlightens everyone. Okay, and the most important aspect is to be curious. Okay, I have no special talent. I am just passionately curious. Okay, keep on asking questions to yourself, to your environment. Keep on challenging yourself, and I'm sure you'll come out with flying colors. Okay, you have my contact details on the screen. I respond to most of my emails. I respond to most of my WhatsApp. I am on LinkedIn. You can feel free to reach out to me if you have any question, query, comments. I've tried to answer most of the questions which was put in the chat box. And friends, thank you so much for your patient listening. It's almost 7:30, and thank you so much. Over to you, Sampurn.
Thank you, sir. That was quite an insightful session, I must say. Very interesting to listen. And we have covered almost all the questions that were asked during the session. A few more popped up, but they were kind of repetitive, so I skipped them. Moving forward, Uday sir has joined us. So to cover up the next session, we have with us another learned speaker, CA Uday Kulkarni ji. Brief introduction of CA Uday sir ji is CA Uday Kulkarni ji is a practicing chartered accountant with professional experience of 25 years. A fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Uday sir is certified internal auditor CIA and also certified informational system auditor CISA. He is also qualified as insolvency professional under the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code of India. Udeji has also completed digital forensic course. His focus areas are information security audit, cyber security, forensic audit, and IBC advisory. CA Uday has wide experience in various types of information system audit, external audit, and internal audit, fraud investigations, and due diligence, etc. Apart from practicing, Udeji is a national faculty for banking concurrent certificate course and forensic accounting course of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He has imparted training on various aspects of forensic auditing, money laundering, legal aspects, and cyber security for legal and investigating officers in Sri Lanka, Nepal, CA Institute, RBI Academy, SFIO, SBI Credit Risk Academy, NIBM, etc. So, with detailed introduction of CA Udeji, I welcome Uday sir, and I request him to please take over and continue this session that was left out by Durgesh ji. Uday sir, over to you.
Yeah, hello and good evening, all the participants. And thank you, Sampurna. I hope all of you are getting my voice. Can you please
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
The
Thank
voice
you.
is on.
Okay. So thank you, Sampurna, for your kind and I thought it was a brief introduction when I shared, but it went too long. So I have to cut it down furthermore. I will take care of that in the next time. And thank you, Durgesh Bhai. You have shared your earlier thoughts on the opportunities. Now, it's yes. So thank you, Sampurna. Now let us move ahead with this the second aspects related to the opportunity. In the line, I'm going to talk the same thing in a different perspective. Is it okay, Sampurna, that you are able to view my PPT? Hello, Sampurna?
The screen is visible.
Yeah, is it visible?
Screen visible.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So the continuing with the same theme, I mean opportunities for the forensic investigator. I'm looking it from a different perspective. Okay, definitely couple of slides or couple of thoughts could be repetitive what Durgesh Bhai has discussed with you. But that is required when I have to put certain, different perspective also. And that's why I have titled it as a fraud risk and not as a forensic investigator or forensic accountant as such. Because I'm looking rather than the forensic professional as either as a forensic accountant or forensic investigator, I'm looking at it as from the skills which you have acquired when you have studied the forensic or you are qualified as a forensic professional. So that skill set is more important, and how to use that skill set, that is something which one has to thought about. Because what is happening right now, when we are looking at the opportunity, let us say that we are thinking, what could be the opportunities? I think Durgesh Bhai as well discussed that with you, where the opportunities are as a preventive forensic or as a detective forensic. He has very well discussed that. So all those opportunities are there. But when we are considering these opportunities, what we are thinking, whether we are expecting that there should be increase in the number of frauds, right? So that when there will be increase in number of frauds, we will get new clients always, and it is possible for us to to get an opportunity. Is that something is coming in our mind? Of course, I'm not denying that in the coming futures, there would be the lesser amount of the frauds or the frauds will decrease, right? But with that expectation, whether we are looking at the forensic investigation opportunity, that is the question which we have to thought about. Why there is an increasing trend of the frauds? Even so much of the preventive mechanism have been set after each and every fraud, right? Whenever the road accident takes place, government comes with certain new rules for the traffic. But even after that, the accidents are happening. Similarly, whatever be the laws, regulations, or in our professional language, what we see as an internal controls are getting tightened enough, but still it shows the increasing number of frauds. So what is the reason for that? And because of that increasing trends, whether we are expecting more and more opportunities to provide the services either as a forensic accountant or as a forensic investigation, in a way, forensic professional. Now, why we are to think about that? Because at the background of all of us, whether we are practicing as a chartered accountant or whether we are practicing as a forensic professional, at the background, what is happening? A digital innovation is taking every day on its own. It is an ongoing development. Digital innovation is happening at every field, with whatever robotics, AI, blockchain, whatever you talk about. Right. Now there is an open AI kind of a platform where you will get whatever the questions you put, you will get the answers for that. Even you can prepare the policies. Even you can prepare the anti-fraud policies on the basis of that. So the digital innovations are there. The questions are whether these digital innovations are going to support the frauds. I mean, the modus operandi of the fraud will be like that. That the frauds will be operated through these digital innovations. So the fraudsters are becoming smart enough to use this digital innovation, and that is happening. That is the truth. That's why we are talking about the cyber security, cyber crime, cyber threats, all these things, isn't it? And because of the digitalization of the services, digitalization of the products, the frauds are also taking place on that platform. So in my opinion, even though digital innovations are there, that is a good cause, but those technicalities, those innovations are also used for the bad cause by the fraudsters. Whether these digital innovations could be used to control the frauds, right? And whether these digital innovations will set new trends of the frauds. Whatever we have discussed, whatever we have learned about to tackle up the frauds with the forensic skills, whatever we have acquired. I think Dirgesh Bhai might have also discussed about the various forensic skills. I'm not going to repeat those skills. But with those skill sets, whatever the trends of the frauds which is happening in these digital innovations, whether we are trained enough, we are qualified enough to carry out the forensic in that area. For example, now there could be a possibility that there could be the fraud in the artificial intelligence. Some businesses might be using the artificial intelligence in their processes. And in that artificial intelligence, there is a possibility of a fraud. Or cryptocurrency. Latest example is the fraud in the cryptocurrency. Now, whether our skill sets are enough, forensic skill sets are enough to justify or to accept those assignments as an opportunity. Somebody will argue with that, okay, we have to keep ourselves learning. We'll have to acquaint ourselves with this technology. And that's how we can update our skill set, forensic skill set, and then we can tackle these technical frauds. Agreed, totally agreed. But my viewpoint is a bit different. How it is different, I will just explain that. And that's how I'm looking at it as an opportunity for exploring my forensic skills. I'm not exploring the opportunities for the forensic investigation. I'm not exploring the opportunities as a forensic accountant, but I'm exploring my possibilities, my opportunities for my forensic skills. And that is what we have to look. Because many of the times we qualified as a forensic professional, we qualified as a forensic accountant, then we start thinking in the same fashion that whether I will go to the police, whether I should go to the the agencies which are conducting the investigations, whether they will give me the opportunity, what can I do? Right. All these things are there. Opportunities are there. I'm not saying that there are not opportunities, but there are certain limitations. Of course, there are certain limitations because the number of frauds, the number of investigating agencies are handling these cases. And then it is coming down to us as an opportunity. So there are certain restrictions, because when you are talking about the opportunity in the field of audit, when you are talking about the opportunities in the taxation, that is a very wide area. Every day you can think about that opportunity. But this is a very, very specialized area. So you cannot think that every day you will get an opportunity as a forensic accountant or as a forensic investigator. It's not possible, to be very frank. Then, what can I do with my forensic skill? That is the question. Whatever the forensic skill I have acquired during my training, during my qualification, what can I do with that? Where I can use that forensic skill set, that is something which I am talking about. I hope the theme of this talk might have been captured by all of you. Right. Now, on the background, one way we are saying that there should be control on the frauds. If the frauds are rising, if there is an increasing trend in the number of frauds, that does not show the good economic behavior, the good economic atmosphere. It does not represent that. And what are right now the stakeholders, various stakeholders' expectation from this economic environment? Whether it's from the company, whether it's from the business, whether it's from the trust, whether it is from the NGO, what are their expectations? They are expecting a timely and accurate information, whether it be the financial or non-financial. A simple expectation, so that they can take the appropriate decision. That is one of the simple expectation as far as the businesses, as far as their interest in the economy or business is concerned. Now, when they are thinking about that accuracy and timeliness of the information, they are also thinking now the common man who is using the smartphone is also aware that there are a lot of digital platforms available. And all these big businesses, big business houses, of course, they are using a lot of advanced digital platforms. So from the common man's perspective, there should be a structured approach for these business houses to formulate their own SOPs with the use of the latest advanced technology. Then they think that why there is a delay in my response. When I am submitting a complaint, why there is a delay in resolution of that complaint? Why there is no quick action? Why there is a delay that some control weaknesses are there, and then still the organization is not making any correction into that. Why there is a delay? When the government is enforcing certain new laws, new regulation, why there is a delay on the businesses? Why there is a lot of talk about that? Right. And see, the stakeholders, any stakeholder, they don't want to invest either time or their money for the investigation. Because that is not their intention when they are investing, or then when they are looking at the business houses or even at the economy. They don't want to invest their own money for the investigation. The moment you say that in one particular X company, some forensic investigation is going on, and if that news is getting spread across the media, look at what the reaction of the stakeholders happens. Even that could be the wrong impression. But at that same moment, the reputation of that particular business house is getting affected. We all know that. And in a way, it is getting reflected in the market value of that shares or the market value of that business. So stakeholders are not expecting that, because they have invested their hard-earned money into those businesses. So whether they are in the support that, okay, forensic investigation opportunity should be increased, whether the stakeholders are expecting that, ultimately, what is the takeaway of this PPT? Whether the stakeholders are expecting that, okay, the frauds are rising, investigation is also rising, it's okay, kind of a thing. When the economy is developing, when the economy is increasing in its size, when the number of audits are increasing, that is a good sign. The taxpayers are increasing, that is a good sign. Tax returns are increasing, that is a good sign. More and more the business houses are coming under the indirect taxation, that is a good sign. But if you look at from the stakeholders' point of view, whether they will say that, okay, more and more investigation opportunities shall come, whether that will be the welcome move for these stakeholders, I suppose that is not. Rather, they are expecting a reverse training. Right. Then the question is whether I have started on the negative tone that, okay, there is no opportunity. I'm not saying so. I'm still positive. Right. I'm optimistic, very much optimistic, but not as a forensic investigator or not as a forensic accountant. But I'm having the confidence on my forensic skill sets which I have acquired during this training. So even I don't bother whether I'm getting an opportunity as a forensic detective or preventive. I'm not don't bother about it. Right. So I'm confident about my forensic skills, and now I want to apply those forensic skills. Okay, if I will get the opportunity as a forensic investigator, I will definitely do that. If I will get the forensic accountant opportunity, I will definitely do that. I will try for that also with these various agencies or for these various purposes. I'm not denying that. But when there is a limitations on number of these opportunities, how can I use my skill set? Whether I can look at that skill set in a different perspective and put it before the economy, that is what we have to thought of. Right. I think you can now join me with that link. And when I'm talking about the use of that skill set, we need to understand the fraud risk. Not necessarily actually the fraud has taken place, but assessment of the fraud risk in the business houses. Because business houses are now doing a lot of risk assessment internally also. Even the audits are based on the risk-based concepts. So there are a lot of different types of the risk which they are assessing, they are identifying, they are mitigating, trying to mitigate. The major risk is the fraud risk. What is the fraud risk? I think if you go through the forensic accounting and investigation standard, that risk is defined. So that any event which will, the outcome of that will be unfavorable, and it will show that there is a presence of fraud, that is a risk. And nobody wants that. Even the society is not expecting. Even the stakeholders are not expecting. That's what I earlier talked about. Then what to do? I know that doesn't prevent you, or even in the detection, you have to carry out the risk assessment. While carrying on the risk assessment, all the details might have been discussed by the Durgesh Bhai in his speech. I'm not going to repeat that. But the main theme here is, or the main assessment which I'm looking at that risk assessment, whether the entities or the business houses, whether they are prepared enough to recognize the existence of the fraud risk. Because many of the times, what is fraud? That fraud concept is not clear to these houses or to these entities. I might say so. Because now, after having the qualification as a forensic professional, now we can understand what is fraud. Fraud is something not an unique or common thing which will happen, because usually in the media there is a talk about the fraud or the scam or something like that. So general interpretation, when we talk about the fraud risk, most of the entities will talk like that. We don't have any fraud risk. We have controlled our environment. We have very well controlled our business processes. Our standard operating procedures are well enough. So there is no possibility of the fraud. So where the question comes about the assessment of the fraud. Right. So first thing, I think we need to bring clarity in their understanding that what is a fraud. Fraud could have different flavor under the different acts. Right. It's not just like that when see, in India, what happens that when any entity carries out certain adjustments, they call it as an adjustment, year-end adjustments in the books of accounts. The adjustment is like that non-recognizing certain liability. Let's assume like that. Now they said, okay, we are not recognizing it, that we postpone it for the next year. We will not recognize that at that time. While doing so, nobody understands that this decision may also involve the products. Because of the certain law, because of the certain regulation, that recognition is important. And if that amount is material, and if you are by way of teaming and leading, that means this year's liability you are recognizing in the next year's liability you are recognizing in the next to next year, and so on and so forth. So what you are doing here, you are fabricating your financial statement in such a way that it will show you the rosy picture. And on that basis, if the decisions are taken by the investors, stakeholders, and one fine day that balloon has been collapsed, what will happen? Then at that time, all of us will say that that was a big scam. So they need to understand whatever the decisions they are taking. When we say, as an auditor also, when we look upon the various types of the audit, external auditor, and we remark that, okay, certain accounting standards are not being complied. What is the reason behind that? Is it that they're wishful thinking, they're not to comply with the accounting standard when the law says that there is a mandate to comply with the accounting standard? And if it is continuously, we are observing that in particular company for last 5, 6, 7, 10 years, the same remark is there that the subject to compliance of accounting standards, so and so, the financial account shows the true and fair. Why the particular standard, accounting standard, is not getting tested, not getting implemented, whether that is not a fraud risk? And if the standard like the impairment of the asset needs to be tested and that is not getting carried out, and one fine day the advance is given to the subsidiary company, when we found that it is not getting recoverable, what would be the position of that, financial position of that company? Then we call it that, okay, this is now turned into the fraud. Right. So understanding of the entities, owners, the management, top management, executive level management, whatever you can call it, or even at the operational level also. Whatever decisions they are taking. See, simple case I will give. I work most of the time in the banking sector. That's why I know that. Now, can you imagine that changing of a mobile number of a customer in the master record of the customer without the communication with that particular customer, without any consent with that particular customer, it also carries a fraud risk. A simple, we call that in the banking sector, they call it that is a non-financial data. But now I have started, no, mobile number is a financial data. Why? Because all the importance of having that mobile number we all know. Without mobile number, now we cannot transact with the bank. So even the change of the mobile number in my master records is going to affect fraudulently. There is also fraud risk in that if it is not done in the proper way. But whether the clerk, whether the staff at that level, whether they are ready to recognize that as a fraud risk, that is the key. So that awareness, when before I'm, okay, could be the part of the overall risk assessment. Other techniques and tools might have been discussed with you, but I'm not going to repeat that. But the readiness of the organization, the preparedness of the organization, the awareness of the staff about the fraud risk, that is the key question. And even doing the assessment of the fraud risk, this particular preparedness, maturity of the organization for that kind of risk needs to be done. Then the entity's approach towards the fraud risk. Okay, now they have understood that. Okay, changing a mobile number could carry also fraud risk. So many of the times we discuss, okay, if you do like that without having any documentation, consent, all that stuff from the customer, if you are changing, it carries the fraud risk. Okay, after so much of the arguments, they will accept that. Okay, this is acceptable as fraud. But what is the approach? They say that, okay, in how many cases that is happening? How many customers are coming with the complaints? No, nobody is coming with the complaints. Then why to take that much serious cognizance of this fraud risk? Okay, now they have understood that it is a fraud risk. But how they are now going to mitigate that fraud risk? So their approach, in many of the cases, they say that, okay, we will not go to the extent of the legal proceedings. Whatever the matter, we'll resolve it internally. Either by convincing the customer, either by reimbursing the whatever the loss he has suffered, by one way or another way. Because once the noise will be said, okay, in this bank, particular thing has happened with the change of the mobile number, money has been siphoned up and all these things, cities are going to affect my reputation. So they will not make it public. And most of the time, this approach also supports, motivates the other person, the other staff, instead of rectifying those kind of fraud risk, instead of mitigating those kind of fraud risk, continuously carry out that same repetition of the mistake. So the entity's approach, again, that could be again a part of the maturity of the entity in this assessment, but that is what gives you the signals about their approaches. When the entities are ready to do the assessment of the fraud risk, when there is a legal and regulatory mandate, when the government will issue one fatwa, or when the regulators will issue some mandate, now you will have to carry out this fraud risk assessment, you will have to do certain things, you have to make the policy, they will prepare the policy. Okay, now there is a legal mandate by some stock exchange control authority that there should be an anti-fraud policy. Let us develop the anti-fraud policy. The policy is on the paper. Whenever there will be a call from the regulators, whether you have prepared the policy, whether it is approved by the board, yes, we have a policy, this is anti-fraud policy on the paper, that's all. Whether that is a correct risk assessment. Even when you say that we have developed the policy on the paper, does that mean your fraud risk is going to come down? Right. So, when there is no monetization of the risk, what is the monetization? I will just explain to you. Whatever the risks our entities are identifying, for those risks, there must be a mandate to make a provision. That is happening in the banking sector. How it is happening? All of us know how they calculate the capital adequacy ratio. By assigning some risk weight to certain assets. And according to that, there is a requirement to calculate certain percentage of the capital by considering Tier 1 and Tier 2 capital. But if you only carry out the risk assessment only on the paper with the policies and all that stuff, and if there is no support in the form of capital, then what is the use of that risk assessment? It could be only paper-based things which will not actually going to affect any way financially. The risk assessment needs to affect. Even you are carrying out the risk assessment, you are identifying certain risks. What is the residual risk? Whether you are making the provisions for that. That is as simple. Okay. It looks like very simple when I'm saying that, but it's very difficult to implement that. And friends, why not use our forensic skill sets for these kind of an assessment? How can we do that? I will give some examples also, not to worry about, right? Now, as Durgesh Bhai was talking about, most of the frauds are getting discovered by way of mechanism of tips, a whistleblower mechanism. That is the truth. Most of the frauds. This is the report, which is the survey which was done by the ACFE, Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. In the recent report of 2022, the survey showed that most of the frauds were tabled out, were surfaced because of this tip mechanism. All other mechanisms which we call as the measures of internal control, like the internal audit, management review, documentation, account reconciliation, data monitoring, external audit. What is the contribution of all these internal control mechanisms in the fraud detection? The data is in front of you. Okay, internal audit does have some weightage because the second rank in this list is of an internal audit. And it is expected so, because they are handling the day-to-day, they are verifying the day-to-day procedures also with certain amount of larger sample size. So it is expected from them to detect the frauds. Interestingly, now TIP is the mechanism which is tabling out most of the frauds. They are detecting most of the frauds. Or at least they are communicating something is going wrong. But interestingly, who is communicating, who is giving the tips? From which source the tips are coming from? That is also one interesting point. So if you look at your my right hand side, I have showed that the same survey shows that who is giving most of such fraudulent transactions related tips. So number one is the employee of that organization. So who are working efficiently, effectively as a whistleblower? The own staff, own employees. And that is naturally so. So one thing is clear, the colleagues, the staff of the organizations, they are able to identify, they are able to sense something is going wrong on the fraudulent line. How they are sensing that? That is very, very interesting. Why? So many tips are coming from the employees, not from the auditors, not from the management review, not from the external auditors, even not from that vigilance mechanism. Why this is happening? That is a very interesting research to be carried out. And all of us know that is an open secret. Because employee closely knows the behavior of each other. And who is doing what actually at the workplace. So they are very close to the transaction level. They are very close to the operation level. They are close to the person who could doing this fraud trapping. And that is natural reason. That's why the number of percentage of the tips is coming from the employees. The second rank in this is a customer. 18% of the tips are coming from the customer. Again, very interesting thing to note down, that customer who might be using the services or who might be using the products of the company, what could be the frequency of their using of the services, or what could be the frequency of using of the products of the company? Isn't it fine? You are finding it very interesting that those customers are actually tabling out or detecting or communicating some fraudulent transaction. So if you combine these employees and customer, they are very near to the end use of, or I may say the very near to that end processes or the end operations, at what level the fraud might have taken place. Then as a forensic professional, can I take something out of this that will be useful for me to apply the forensic skill set in such a organization? Because every figure, every data, every survey talks a lot. Even documents talks a lot. So how can I use the data, this data? How can I use this survey to find out the opportunities, not as a forensic investigator, not as a forensic accountant, but for my forensic skills? That is something which we have to think again. And that's why this data, the same data that might have been shared with you by other panelists also. But to look at this data from the use or opportunity for using our forensic skill set, that is what we have to think about, right? If you have any question, please feel free to put your questions. I think whether the chat box are open for all of you or not, I'm not sure. But whenever you are having any question, please put that in the chat box. So whenever we are going to talk about the fraud risk, how to control the fraud risk, the immediate answer comes in the mind is the prevention. And it is 100 times said that, okay, prevention is better than cure. Agree, perfectly agree. But despite of having so much of the preventive mechanism, still the frauds are going on. That is also a reality. So when some frauds will take place, like in 2000 when the giants were collapsed because of these accounting frauds like Enron and others, the governments of many countries, they started thinking what is the root cause of that. Then it came to their knowledge, okay, the internal controls that plays a crucial role in the entities' businesses. So there is a need to assess independently the internal controls. Then everybody started calling that, okay, this is a white collar crime. Why it is a white collar crime? Because it is done by the persons who are having in-depth knowledge about the business processes, accounting standards, all that. So those are the learned professionals or the learned staff. Actually, I missed once the survey record also. If you have that report with you, ACAP, it also they have also one more survey figures are there. They have shown what is the number of years association of the fraudsters with the company. So it shows that that chart shows that the more the number of years of association, there are brighter chances that particular staff may do the fraud. Why it is so? Because the newly joined employee, he or she will not conduct any fraudulent transaction. There is some threat to them. There is a risk. But the employee who is having a tenure of 5 to 10 years, he may tempt to get involved into the fraudulent transaction. Possibility is there. And that the survey shows the same result. Why it is so? The reason is they are well aware about the weaknesses in the business processes, weakness in the internal control, opportunity angle of that fraud triangle. Now, once it is tabled out, okay, this is the this has caused the fraud. This is the weakness in the internal control. So make the internal control very strong. Instead of now using one password to get the access, now let us have a two-factor authentication in the form of OTP. Right. Now, remember my first slide. What I told you, whether the digital innovations are going to control the frauds. This is an excellent example of making the digital innovation. So now digital innovations gives you the two-factor authentication. One factor is your password. Second factor could be your OTPs or your biometric. Digital innovations are there. So now the frauds are happening because of the weaknesses in the access control. So let us make it strong. Let us go with the two-factor authentication. after even that, whether the financial frauds, especially with the banking sector, with their delivery channels, has come down even after the two-factor authentication. So we have to find out the answer, which I questioned in my first slide, whether the digital innovations are going to support the fraud, whether they are going to control the frauds, other these digital innovations are going to set the new trends of the frauds. So the moment you find out, okay, now OTP is the second factor authentication. Let us say that you are doing certain e-commerce type of a transaction with your debit or credit card. What happens? Suppose you are purchasing something on the particular website. So there you have to enter your card number, your CVV, expiry, all that details. The moment you enter that, the internet page will take you to the next page. The next page will, of course, will be of the banks which has issued you the debit or credit card. In the meantime, you will receive the OTP on your mobile. You are trying to enter that OTP on that page, and you assume that, okay, now two-factor authentication, my transaction is twice cross-checked. I am relaxed. There is no possibility of the fraud. Is it going to happen? Are these transactions safe enough? What is the possibility of YAM kind of a man in the middle kind of an attack in this? How the OTPs are landing? Where the OTPs are getting verified? So with the digital innovation, we come under the impression that the frauds would be controlled. I am making the strong internal controls. But in reality, it is setting a new trend. That's what, again, I question whether my forensic skills are enough now to catch that how the OTP was compromised. So this preventive mechanism, even the whistleblower mechanism, okay, whistleblower mechanism, preventive mechanism, 100% agree. There should be a whistleblower policy, there should be a whistleblower mechanism. Means what? So the policy will say that whoever wants to give the, whatever be the information of any trouble, they will, or the stakeholder will have to contact this thing. That will be there. Protection of the whistleblower, of course, that will be there as per the law. No doubt about that. But the thing is that when all the stakeholders of the businesses, mostly the fraudsters could be, I'm supposing here the frauds are taking place internally, where the top management is included in that fraud, or some of the executives are included in that fraudulent activities, or some of the operation level staff is included in that fraudulent transaction. Whether they are not aware that there is a whistleblower mechanism. So they are also aware that there is a whistleblower mechanism. They are also aware that somebody will make a complaint about this transaction. Even my colleague, because we have seen that 16% 55% of the tips are coming from the employees. Whether they are not aware about that, still they are doing it. That means whether the effective whistleblower mechanism is taking place or not. Even after having so much of the preventive mechanism, whether the frauds are coming down. Anti-fraud policies, compliances of the ethics. So the moment you'll ask the various staff, stakeholders to make the compliance of ethics, there is a natural tendency, sometimes maybe intentionally, sometimes maybe unintentionally. The staff is not able to follow those codes. In that case, if there could be inquiry about the breach of the code, there will be submission of reasons. When those reasons are accepted, it is getting communicated to the whole staff, and then the reasons become repetitive. And then their exception becomes the rules. So my question is, okay, this whether I'm saying that there should not be any preventive mechanism, I'm not that opinion again. There should be a preventive mechanism, but how the effectiveness of that preventive mechanism could be measured, right? Whether these preventive mechanisms are actually getting effectively working so as to protect the fraudulent transaction. And whether there is any scope for me as a forensic professional in that particular area so that I can support the business houses, I can support in a way to those entities. If I'm not getting the opportunities in the investigation and in the other detective forensic. And see, the IT guys, information technology guys who are in the IT field, they are more smart than ours. Because the moment they tap that, okay, this is a fraud, this is the cause, they will try to make that opportunity. You can say it's a business opportunity, you can say it's a professional opportunity, but they will grab it very smart. They will grab it very smart. They are not thinking, because most of the time we are only concentrating on using our forensic skills only when we get opportunities in forensic accountant, forensic investigator. We are not looking differently for that forensic skill. But the IT guys, he's not having that compulsion. So they are grabbing the opportunity. Okay, despite of having that strong internal control, despite of having this second factor authentication, still the OTPs are getting compromised. What the best I can do? So they will come with certain solutions. They will come with certain solutions. They will not go for the improvement of the certain skill set, but they will come with the certain solutions. Whatever the limited knowledge or full knowledge, whatever it be, they are having of their IT systems, they are totally using that skill set. They are totally using to grab that opportunity. Okay, even the two-factor authentication is there, still there is the fraud. So I will give some solutions so that will be get stopped. Why not we should adopt those kind of an approach along with finding the opportunities in the traditional way for the forensic investigator and the forensic accountant. Right. So what could be that approach? So as far as the opportunities are considered in the preventive mechanism, this could be the repetition. As I said, there is a possibility of certain slides or certain discussions would be get repeated. I hope this could be the repetition. The same thing might have been discussed by the Durgesh Bhai, but for a few minutes, you have to bear with me. I will repeat some of the things. Sorry for that. So in the preventive mechanism, for assessing or, using our skill sets, there are a lot of opportunities. First opportunity is, the legal and regulatory compliances. Most of the frauds, as I said, is happening because that is a breach of the legal or regulatory provisions. And as I said, in many cases, the entities, top management entities, this executives, they are not aware about that. You might be wondering that even in India, there is a practice for the working capital finance. We call it as a cash credit finance. For the cash credit finance, they accept, the stock and the debtors as a security. On the basis of the stock, the bank calculates the drawing power limit within which the bank, disburse the funds for the working capital finance. What is the authenticity of that stock statement? What is the accuracy of that stock statement? This is a banking compliance. This is a banking practice compliance. That is compulsory for the borrowers to whom this working capital finance is sanctioned by the hypothecation of the stock. But is there any fraud risk? Yes, there is a fraud risk. What is the fraud risk? Submission of inaccurate stock statement and thereby obtaining the high value of the drawing power. That is a fraud risk. But the question is whether the branch level staff, whether the branch level officers, they are aware about that kind of a fraud risk, and there is a certain provisions when if they are submitting such a fake financial statements, whether there is any provision under any law. Yes, there is a provision under the law, under the Companies Act. So in that way, when we are going for the fraud risk assessment, it's just not their preparedness, their awareness, bringing this thing to their notices. It's not through the training again. I'm not going to use the training part here. Then how? I will explain that just a minute. I will explain that. How to pass on that knowledge and all these things. But this is the area which we should look at to explore our forensics. Anti-fraud policies. Yes, anti-fraud policies we can develop, we can prepare. What about its implementation? How to set the vigilance mechanism? In that case, whether the digital platforms are coming to my help along with my forensic skill set, that is the search which I have to take. Right? What I'm saying? Now I am having the forensic skill set. I know that on the other hand, that digital innovations are happening. So both of them needs to combine together and make the use of these opportunities to serve the economy, to serve the country, to serve the sectors. How? Let us take now. So the first thing which we have to understand to find out the opportunity. Now I'm talking about the opportunity part in the practical way. We have to shift the focus from prevention to monitor. What is the meaning of that? Prevention is better than cure. Totally agreed. For the fraud risk mitigation, preventive mechanism needs to be set up. Absolutely agree. But if the preventive mechanism is not monitored, then preventive mechanism does not remain preventive. Ultimately, the detective mechanism comes into the picture. So the preventive mechanism depends a lot on the monitoring for its effectiveness. What I'm saying, preventive mechanism, if you want the preventive mechanism to become effective to control the fraud risk, then your monitoring process, monitoring mechanism should be such a strong that will give the power to your preventive mechanism. And friends, that monitoring mechanism is the area where you can use your forensic skill sets. And to do that, you will have to shift your focus from the forensic skill set as a services to the forensic skill set as a product. Right? Finding it difficult? I will explain you with certain examples also. So we need to develop certain products by using the digital platforms and convert our forensic skill set for the monitoring of the preventive mechanism, and that will give you various opportunities in various business processes, not at one, but at multiple levels in the multiple business processes. There is no limitation. For detective forensic, there is a limitation. But use of the forensic skill sets in the monitoring, no limitation. But if you are going to look at it from the service point of view, limitation. But if you are able to develop the product with the digital platform, no limitation. Because something concretely you are offering to the economy to control the products. Right. And that is how the skill sets needs to be looked into. We have to look at the skill set. Now, what is that? So all these 3 points I have already discussed with you. That preventive mechanism becomes failure if there is no effective monitoring. And the preventive mechanism does not remain preventive, then we have to go to the detective mechanism. So preventive mechanism depends a lot on the monitoring mechanism. Then, what I said right now, shift the focus for using the forensic skill set rather than the detective come at the earlier stage at the monitoring level. And how to use that? Developing a product. That means developing the tools. How can you do that? The question is there. How can we do that? So let us take the cases, how it is happening. And I will also give some additional examples if the time permits. So first we'll start with the cyber threats, cyber frauds, cyber attacks. Now the various regulatory frameworks of the various countries regulator, they are talking about the certain guidelines to be followed to prevent the cyber threats or cyber attacks. One of the requirement of this framework is every organization, they should have one SOC. What is SOC? That is Security Operations Center. Now see, cyber security threat was there. Cyber threat was there. The guidelines was developed to mitigate that risk of a cyber attack. At the global level also the standards were developed. Regulators are also communicated their own guidelines to the various sector organizations. Now, they converted this SOC, requirement of the SOC, Security Operations Center, as a product. The smart IT field, they find the opportunity in these guidelines. It came to their notice that it is not possible for each and every organization to set up these security operations centers. Right? So they developed this requirement as a product. Then there was certain tasks to be carried out in the security operations centers. Basically, mostly it was the monitoring of again, what was the important part in that security operations centers? So 90%, or you can say 80% of the task is related to monitoring of the various logs and the trails. Continuously monitoring certain logs and the trails. That was also smartly captured by these IT guys. They came up with certain softwares which will monitor these logs without any human intervention. Right? So what happened? When the cyber threat was there, guidelines came down from the regulators. The IT sector tapped that opportunity, started to give in the services of the SOC as a product, developed the tools which were required for this SOC. That tools were developed to monitor the logs and trail. Once it is monitored, there is also requirement of the forensic in that analysis. For that forensic purpose, some programs were written down, some tools came up. So these tools are using the threat intelligence, incident response. Now all these are automated. All those are automated. So what they did, There was an opportunity. There was a fraud risk. There was a fraud risk in the form of a cyber security threat. They converted all these things. Each and every step, they converted as a product. And there are many organizations which are offering these services. We are also learned this digital forensic technique. We have also learned this data analysis techniques. Why you are not able to develop such a product at this monitoring level, where they have developed the product at the monitoring level and further analysis? These software companies, these IT companies, they are not waited. Okay, when the attack will happen, when I will go and detect, which agency will give me the work to detect. No. So they started marketing like that. Okay, if you don't want that kind of a fraud risk, if you don't want that kind of a cyber security risk, we are having this ready-made product. Now, my friends, why the same concept we are not able to apply when I'm making the claim that the stock statements which are submitted fabricatedly to the bankers, why we are not able to develop any of the monitoring tool to analyze how that stock statement was fabricated. And before accepting that stock statement by the banker for the DP calculation, why we are not developing any tool? We are having all the knowledges. We are having all the knowledge. But whether we are using that skill set to develop such a tool. If you use that, if you use certain tools that will analyze, because you are having now the data analytics skill set, only thing is that you will have to take the help for the development of some digital platform with the technical balance. Business logic is with you. Forensic logic is with you. So why we are not developing that intelligence which will stop this kind of DP frauds? Right, this is one example. Let us go ahead. Money laundering activities. Now, the financial sectors or even the other sectors in all the countries, there is a requirement that they have to assess the risk of the money laundering. And for that purpose, they have to submit certain reports to the intelligence agencies. In India, it is known as an FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit. One of the important reports which is expected out of that reporting is the suspicious transaction report. The moment the act was enacted, the moment that mandate was given to certain banking sector, financial sector, look what happened. Anti-money laundering software developed. Right? They started inventing the red flags. So red flags were identified. The red flags were configured in that money laundering software and started analyzing the data on the basis of the red flags. So there was a risk of money laundering activities. That is also one of the type of the fraud. But IT companies, they were smart enough. They converted this opportunity that there is a threat of money laundering in this financial sector, and the regulatory authorities mandating these sector players to report certain activities. It is not possible to the human efforts. They captured that. Or I might say that they started saying that it is not possible for the human beings. And that is true also, because how much data one person can analyze. And that now tool is doing everything. Why we are not using these skill sets? Still now, there is a scope in this activity. I'm just not saying that in the air, because in this week, the day before yesterday, I was talking with one particular IT company where they're asking me now that we have developed a tool, the financial institutions are using the tool, but they don't know how to handle the further operational workflow for the compliance purpose, which could be also automated. What you are going to use the detective skill set when there will be an opportunity from these agencies, use the same skill set in the compliances of this. That was expected. And that is still expected. So red flags monitoring, even the tools are there, the red flags monitoring is still an important activity. There is a lot of opportunity. I myself is involved in such type of practices where I'm identifying these red flags. I'm implementing these red flags. Of course, this is not for preventive. Okay, this is a preventive, but with the red flags, what is going to happen? All the suspicious activities are going to be monitored. And somebody should be there for the monitoring purposes, and he can sense if there is certain suspicious activities here. Who is going to do that? Again, we have that sense. We have studied that sense. We are having that skill set. So why not to use in these activities? Lot of opportunities are there because this area is getting wider and wider. More and more agencies will be covered for these reporting purposes. Right now it is banking, financial institutions and all that. But definitely this area is going to develop. Why not to look into this area and get some opportunities with these kind of entities? Banking and financial digital channels. These are the known cases. Now, as I said, digital innovation started, card operations started, digital channels started using for the digital funds transfer, digital innovations for the betterment of the society, for the betterment of the economy, for the betterment of the banking and financial institution. Yes, right? All the things are goody. Still they are in the good stage. But the moment they started the card operation, card fraud started. So digital innovations were used for the fraud purposes also. Remember, again, my first slide. Now, if these things have started, when these things have started as a fraud in the card operation, immediately the IT company sensed that there is a threat of a card fraud. So they developed one tool that is known as a fraud risk management. Then there are a lot of tools. So they started tapping the behavior of the card user, and on that basis, they developed certain algorithms which will give you the indications to the bank to trace out whether the funds are really transferred by the genuine users or it is the fraudulent transaction. Who is giving that signals? Software is giving that signals. Who is giving that alerts? Software is giving the alerts. But that skill set, the reasons for the frauds, modus operandi of the frauds, we are studying now. The same thing they studied. When they developed this behavior kind of a tool set, we also know that the behavior part of the fraudsters. But they were able to develop that in the digital platform. They developed that capacity to capture the behavior of the customer or the card user into on the digital platform, and they developed that too. Whether we are trying in that fashion. What is the effectiveness of forensic skill and monitoring in the prevention of monitoring money laundering activity? That's I said. Now there are different techniques of the money laundering. There are various ways by which money laundering activities are happening. As we say that we are having the skill set of tapping the behavior of the fraudsters, We are having the knowledge of the financial transaction, how they can take place. Because we are the financial experts or the accounting experts also. And now additional skill set about various types of the skill. I'm not repeating that forensic skills, use of the inverse logic and all that stuff, detective skill sets, all that skill set we are having. Those are the forensic skills combined with our financial knowledge, combined with their accounting knowledge. That's enough to monitor the money laundering activities. That's enough, because that will give you certain indications, that will give you certain red flags, which could be a part of identification of the activities. What could be that? The one example I have directly given. When we say that loans where the loan amount was siphoned off, I'm answering to the question, how it is closely associated, sir. So we know that loan frauds typically involve siphoning of the loan amount, siphoning of the borrowed funds. Most of the time, it is happening to the cash credit account. Cash credit is depending upon the DP limit. DP limit depends upon the stock statement. We all know this chain. We all know what happens in the stock statement. Even without the forensic skill, also we know that what happens. But in addition to that, now we know that how to trace that the stock statement is fabricated. We know that as a forensic skill, how to trace whether the stock statement is genuine or the fraudulent one. Isn't it? Only thing is that siphoned amount could have been part, because if it is a company fraud under the Companies Act, now it will go to the money laundering activity. So that is the connection. That is the connection between the effectiveness of our forensic skill set, use of that, and utilizing that for this money laundering kind of an activity. Right? So that things we have to understand. And now as I said, more and more complications would be there because of the digital innovation, as I said. So there could be virtual assets, there could be cryptocurrency transactions. Even for the detection also, you will require some tool sets. When there would be the fraud in such a digital weapons, to trace out the details of these virtual assets, to trace out the details of the cryptocurrency, there is a requirement to develop certain tools. Why not? We have to use those certain skill set to develop these kind of tools. So again, forensic skill, it may be possible that certain things, new things for this virtual asset, cryptocurrency, right now you might not have been acquainted with. That's fine, but that can be learned. Or the person who is expert in that, you can combine your skill set with those persons. Develop the tools, take an opportunity. Now, in the typical risk assessment, what happened? We go with the Excel sheets. We use those Excel sheets for the risk assessment, maturity level, blah, blah, blah things. Now, rather than doing the risk assessment on the basis of Excel sheet, developing a tool which will use the real-time data, that will also use monitoring of the transaction, that will also give you some red signals. We know various red flags that we have discussed as a forensic skill. What could be the red flags? Try to gather that red flags in the various business processes. Rather than having the Excel-based platform, develop some tools which will gather the red flags. Develop the digital platform to monitor these red flags. Use some financial algorithms if it is going to affect my financials. A lot of financial algorithms are available. Or you can develop even the new algorithms of your own. He's stopping you. So the approach should be that if there is nothing wrong in expectation that we have to go for this detective kind of and forensic services, there is nothing wrong, absolutely. We have to expect for that opportunities. But when we are expecting that opportunities, look at the society. we are expecting that certain things are going up, which the society is not interested in. Right? So society is interested in prevention of those things. So there, again, I'm repeating the same thing. It is not going to stop at any level. The trend will be increased, but the increasing trend will be get support from the digital innovation. And the digital innovations frauds needs to be tackled with the digital weapons. Your human forensic skill set will have certain limitations. As I told you, in case of a virtual asset, in case kind of a cryptocurrency frauds, our individual or human forensic skill sets are limited, are having certain limitations. For those things, you will have to develop certain tools, certain products. Like sometimes now when they started, saving the data on the computer in the hard disk, and when there was no necessity because no fraud was taking place in that digital domain, nobody was thinking that there would be a tool which will capture the image of that data. But as and when the progress would happen, when the society witnessed, the economy witnessed that there is a fraud in these computer systems, and it needs to be traced out, they developed a product to capture the image. Further things went ahead, they developed the product to analyze that data in a different way. Right? So think about your forensic skill set from that perspective. There, the wide opportunities are open. And I'm again repeating that it is not in the preventive sector. Prevention is there. A lot of things are there in the preventive mechanism. And that will get evolved again and again. Because the way the new fraud techniques are going to happen, of course, the government will develop certain new laws, because right now the Data Privacy Act will be in the place, because now everybody knows what is the value of the personal data. Government also came to know what is the value of the personal data, how the personal data is getting misused. So government has come up with the new law. So whenever these fraudulent activities, and that's why I gave the example of the road accident, whenever the road accident will take place, definitely there will be the new rules. So this process will not stop. The preventive mechanism will not stop. Preventive mechanism will always grow. Whenever there is a fraud, the government, the stakeholders, the regulators, or even the business entity itself, they will start implementing some of the preventive mechanism. But as I said, preventive mechanism itself is not strong enough. It is not get monitored in a well-mannered fashion. And that monitoring part, right now, because of the volume of the transaction, because of the use of the digital platform, it is not basically could be handled by the human beings. So there is also necessity for that monitoring part. Monitoring from the forensic point of view, that is where we land. And that is what we have to look at from the opportunity point of view. So I think that's the message I wanted to convey, because all other opportunities, Durgesh Bhai have rightly communicated in his first part. All those opportunities are there, and that will keep coming up. But apart from that, this area is wide open and a lot of opportunities are there. So we have to tap those opportunities. So that's what I wanted to say. Now it's over to Sampun.
Thank you, sir. I must say that was quite an informative session and very extensive. I'm sure all the participants have taken a lot from it. The only question that appeared in the admin panel, we have discussed it. So
yes, Sampun. We have discussed that.
Yes, sir. So moving on with this, we have come to the end of this enriching session, and ICA Sampun Sharma, moderator for today's session, would like to thank CA Devashish Mitra ji, President ICAI. I think I have some connection issues. Is my voice audible?
Yes, Sampurna, it's audible.
Okay, thank you, sir. CA Devashish Mitra ji, the President ICAI, CA Aniket Sunil Talati ji, Vice President ICAI, and the newly elected members from SAFA, CA Nihar and Jambu Saria ji, President, and Mr. Heshana Kurupu ji, Vice President SAFA, CA Charanjot Singh Nanda ji, Chairman Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, CA Dayanivas Sharma ji, Vice Chairman Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, and of course our two eminent speakers, CA Durgesh Pandey ji and CA Uday Kulkarni ji. I extend my greatest thanks for taking out time, sir, and sharing your knowledge light on this topic. I also extend my thanks to all the members who have joined to make this session a wonderful one. And last but not the least, I would like to thank the staff who makes this session possible for all of us, and so that we can exchange the knowledge and the views that we have. So with this, I'd also like to request all the members to please stay in touch. We keep on organizing these sessions every Friday. So you're requested to please stay updated for the same. And with this, I would like to thank Uday sir. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sampurna ji.
With this, we close the session for today, sir. Thank you, everybody, for joining.